Welcome to Elmar's ecosystem.
It's an ecosystem. Everything is connected.
It's an amazing experience.
I'm here with Ludwig. So nice to see you. We met in the field actually.
By Tierkop.
Yeah, close to Tierkop here in George. It's great having you here.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Yeah. The first question I want to ask is like, where did your passion for nature come from? Because I know I've seen you on iNaturalist and all of that, but I've never seen your face. So it was nice seeing the face. So I just want to know, like, where did your passion start for nature?
My passion actually started almost as soon as I was born, and it may sound weird to say that, but the first conscious memory I have was of my father teaching me the scientific name of a plant that was growing on the block.
That's cool.
Yeah, and where we were living at the time, Belleville, Cape Town.
Oh, you're also from Belleville?
Yes.
No way.
Yeah.
I was born and bred in Belleville.
Oh, lekker. But ironically enough, that plant that he was teaching me the scientific name of was a bulbine.
Wow.
So
which one? The frutescens?
Frutescens, yes.
Yeah, that's the one you have in your garden there.
It's so common in cultivation.
Oh.
And that's the one people generally know of to break the leaf and to use the sap for wound
Yes,
healing.
for wound. That's
Yes,
correct. That's
yes.
cool. I forgot about that now that you mentioned that.
But so that was my first conscious memory. And from then on, as I was growing up, my father always encouraged a passion for nature in his children. So he wouldn't teach us to be scared of snakes.
That's
we would,
cool.
I mean, it's not like the children would catch snakes, but he would catch snakes for us and explain, okay, so this is a tabakrolletjie or this is a rooilepie and it's not dangerous.
Exactly.
And as time went by, I started going into the field on my own steam, not with my father.
Because your own interest grew.
Exactly. And that's not to say he wasn't involved. He had a big part to play. I remember when we moved to George and I was still quite young, we would go to the botanical gardens and he wouldn't let me go past certain plants until I could tell him the scientific name.
Wow.
So, I mean, talk about PTSD.
Damn.
No, that's pretty
imagine
hectic.
it's a difficult name, then what?
Yeah.
Some of those names are really difficult to
But there was an
remember.
alternative. I didn't have to tell him the scientific name if I could tell him the medicinal usage.
Ooh,
So
that's
also
interesting.
Very interesting.
Well, not everything
yes.
has medicinal usage, though.
True.
But most things have, actually. Especially indigenous plants.
Yeah.
Fynbos is just amazing.
That's another thing you learn is that there's no such thing as a weed. Everything we think of as weeds was actually intentionally brought here by the European settlers because they used these plants for certain
Exactly.
ailments.
It's like wattle. Wattle was
Exactly.
used. Oh, that door. I forgot about the door. It's okay. Yeah, like the wattle. Like it was used for fencing. Black
Exactly.
wattle. That's why it was brought in. And the
Yeah.
same with Port Jackson was used for the dune handling. Stabilization. Yeah,
Exactly.
it's super cool actually.
Yeah.
So you say Belleville.
Belleville, yes.
I can't believe it. Like your dad. What does your dad do? Sorry to change the subject.
My
but-
dad's a doctor.
Okay.
And at the time, he was secretary of the Christian Medical Fellowship. So we were based in that part of the world at that time.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, so yeah, as the time went by and I started actually being interested in plants more because I always felt my father was kind of more on the plants, but I had a massive interest in animals and fishes and birds, but not so much in plants because they can't move and they're kind of boring,
Yeah.
especially to a young kid.
To a young kid, it's definitely like that.
I began to get more and more fascinated by the world of plants and to see more, wait, these are actually really, really cool. And my interest led me to iNat. And iNat,
When did that happen about? Like when did you start using iNaturalist?
I think I started using iNat around 2019. So it was still pretty fresh, pretty new on the scene then.
Yeah, I also started there.
Because it was
actually.
iSpot before
Yes,
that.
it was iSpot
yeah.
before that. That's correct.
But so iNat I was just using for my birds. But I would go to the mountain, I would see all these beautiful plants and I would photograph them, but I had no clue how to photograph a plant. That's the biggest thing for me now, identifying plants on iNat, if we don't have photographs of the flower or the fruit or the roots or the leaves, it's difficult to identify.
That's actually so true that you say that, because we're used to it by now. We know we should take the picture of the flower if we want to ID, but like a normal person who's starting to ID plants will just probably take a picture of the stem or just the leaf point, you know. Or
Yeah. And so what I would do, I would just say, oh, there's a pretty flower, and I would photograph it, but it would just be the flower. And then people would come back to me on iNat and like, but how do you expect us to identify this?
Yeah, we need everything.
Exactly. And so one of the people that came back to me, I actually remember the observation. It was one of my Indigophoras from Outramps Pass. And the lady came back to me. It was Tani Dai.
Okay.
Her iNat username is, what's it? Tani Dai. Yeah.
I think it's Tani Dai.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she said, you don't know how to take proper pictures of a plant. But she said it in the nicest possible way. But she said, why don't you come with us on our next
oh, wow, that's awesome.
Excursion? Because as it happened, at that time, she was the leader of the local CREW group. So for those who don't know, CREW stands for Custodians of Rare and Endangered Wildflowers. So the acronym CREW. And basically it's a citizen science voluntary-based organization that's headed by Sanbi, that monitors endangered and threatened plants in the wild and provides regular updates on their conservation status. Are they doing very well at this site? Has the population doubled over the last 5 years? If they have, maybe take it down from endangered to vulnerable, and so on. So it was a real privilege for me to be involved with them. And that was late 2020, 2021.
Okay.
And then for that year, because I was homeschooled, there was a lot of flexibility in my curriculum, and at that stage they were going out every Saturday or every Friday, and I would make it part of my curriculum to go out with them. You know, botany 101.
That's cool.
Yeah.
There's so much knowledge to share, I'm sure.
They were really so knowledgeable, and most of my knowledge of the plants of the Southern Cape I gained from them during that time.
I think I should come with one time.
Oh, verseker. I mean, you'd enjoy it.
Yeah, definitely.
So, and once I had this base with CREW, with Outramps. So the local CREW branch was called Outramps for Outramps tramps, but not tramps like Matthew, but like they tramp all over the place.
They tramp all over the place.
Exactly, yeah. So the Outramps. But once I had that base with them, then I could start moving into other fields. So I should mention also at about the same time I started going out with them, I also started volunteering at the Southern Cape Herbarium, which is based at the Botanical Gardens. Okay. And most people don't know that we've got a herbarium in the Southern Cape. Yeah, but we do.
I didn't know that.
Actually, over the last year, another one has started that's in Stilbaai.
Wow.
So we've now got two.
Okay, that's
Stilbaai and the Botanical Gardens.
Where do they keep the herbarium?
So it's in the Audrey Moriarty Center behind the restaurant.
Oh,
yeah.
okay,
And we open Tuesdays from 9 to 12. Anybody who wants us to identify a plant, you bring a sticky and we'll do it.
Wow. Are you volunteering there?
Yes, I'm volunteering.
Oh.
And so then there were people there who were more specialist and who had a lifetime of botany behind them. And they would then take me like baby steps, but down the road to actually getting more involved and getting more in detail and not being satisfied with a surface level overview of plants, but actually going down into taxonomy and into morphology.
Yeah, that's nice.
And so now that's a pretty dangerous combo. I'm going out into the field every week. I'm going to the herbarium and reading an academic literature every week. So the two are going to feed into each other and inform each other. And what would happen was, when I went out with Outramps, you very quickly learn to get your eye in the sense of, okay, so you're now in North Outramps Sandstone Fynbos, and you know more or less what to expect in this kind of habitat, and now you see something that doesn't quite fit, or that doesn't click, you know, it's out of place.
Yeah.
So you focus on that thing. Okay, I think that's something interesting, and often that would turn out to be a new species. Yeah. But I wouldn't know. I would just say, okay, that's interesting. I'd photograph it, but now properly. Yeah. That's the first thing they taught me. And I'd take the photographs and sometimes a little sticky back to the herbarium, and the people would say, oh, but that's a new species, or it's actually
one that got lost or something like that. Yeah.
And so that's how I started finding my first new species, which happened to be in the genus Bulbine.
This one.
Well, this is one of them.
Okay, we'll talk about this one now, but I just want to mention, I think that's happened with me as well. Like you get so used to your habitats. Like I was used to the forest of Knysna. Like I can, when I see something weird out of place, I usually spot it. Like it's like an eyesore that just pops out of the environment. And this one time I spotted like you know that strawberry guava, that invasive. They actually grow in the forest at places as an invasive.
But they're not tall, hey?
No, they're short, shrubby trees, but they're like, I think it's the birds that spread them. And I can remember I spotted this thing, I was like, what the hell tree is this? This doesn't make sense. It's not supposed to be here. But yeah, I think I've seen a lot of species in the fynbos as well, where you see it and you know, okay, but that looks different. And then you forget about it, kind of. And you're like, but it might have been a different species I've never seen before. But I thought initially it might have just been a variation difference or something like that. Or, you know, a different genotype or morphology or whatever. And you don't really think anything about it. You just forget about it. So yeah, it's quite interesting like that.
It's fascinating. I mean, and also the Knysna forest has some really weird trees. And if you know what you're looking for, you pick them up quite quickly. Yeah, like, for example, you know, Blaukrans, Keurboom's River area.
Yes.
That's a place that actually has a colony of Prunus africana. I forget the scientific name.
No, that's true. Name. But it's the, what do you call it? Man, isn't it the wild, not the, I know the name, I can't think of it. The red stinkwood.
Yeah, it could be that.
I think it's the red stinkwood.
Yeah. But then the next colony is like way up in Eastern Cape or KZN.
Yes,
it makes no sense.
It's the same with the Blanche-Bleachwood.
Yeah, Phoria. That's exactly. And that's actually a protea.
Yep.
Which is so weird.
It's weird, Protea's family. It's crazy.
It's nuts.
Now, there has to be a lot of extinctions that happened in between, or this wild fairy. Okay, this is quite wild. But like, imagine people took it, like early humans, and planted them. That's like but that's a bit wild fairy.
Yeah, but there's
I'll
actually
have a big chat on that one time, but not now.
There's something else interesting on that line, where there is the Chorikwa health bush. They call it that. The English name for me makes no sense. In Afrikaans, it's the Agdageneesbossie, or that's the name for the genus. But now this particular one, I don't know if it was even used for healing, but it's only found there at Chorikwa and nowhere else in the world, except at Drechtevlei. But now you know what's so funny is the population of Drechtevlei is growing on limestone lithology with a bit of sandstone influence. It's the only place in the whole area with a bit of sandstone influence. The rest is limestone.
Okay.
And then the population at Chorikwa is also growing pure limestone, but the spot where they're growing has sandstone koppie, which is interesting. You kind of wonder, okay, but how is it possible that those could be the only two places in the world? They're so far apart from each other. And I've heard a theory actually proposed to me by Mike Cameron, who was a lecturer at Sarsfield for many years.
He was a forester, wasn't he?
Exactly, yes. An ecologist.
Yeah.
And he proposed to me that it was actually forestry workers who planted it there, who must have been to Chorikwa, and they said, okay, this thing is so beautiful, we're going to plant it there, but they happen to have just the right lithology. Yes, but then, okay, so that's one theory. And the other theory is that when the sea was much lower and the coastal plain was still a thing, you know, it was all Renosterveld, and well, that's what they say. But then the theory is that the Labostemon was growing there, and as the sea pushed further inland, then the population's isolated.
Yes.
And they're both quite interesting theories. I prefer the second one. But, I mean, the fact that you mentioned there's human interference, it could be.
It could be, you know, humans lived a long time and we did weird things.
Yeah, like, really weird things.
As hunter-gatherers, as, you know, people doing livestock grazing, you don't know what they did, you know. There's no records on it, and that's why you can't throw it out. You can't throw out that theory of people planting, because we're planting trees now, are we not? We're planting Afrocarpus. I'm using 3 examples because I'm a tree guy, but in the Cape, and it's not supposed to be there, and it's thriving there. So it's just an example.
It's definitely the anthropomorphic influence of man on the planet has really increased over the past couple hundred years.
Yeah, we're changing landscapes drastically.
Yeah, no, big time. I was just thinking now, in terms of fynbos ecology, how the Khoisan and the Bushmen are purported to have intentionally burnt the fynbos to get the geophytes because it's a great source of starch.
Yes.
And,
And all the grasses that come
yes,
first. All that energy.
Well, the
just-
Khoisan would then do it because they were herders, and so they
Yes.
wanted the grasses for their livestock. But I think the Bushmen were more hunter-gatherers.
Mm.
And
Yeah, that makes
Yeah.
sense. Yeah, but let's get into this species, the bulbine decumbens. Did I say that right?
Yes, decumbens.
I can't always say my Latin words right. You know, I mix up my Afrikaans and English, and then I just like make up words
I
sometimes.
think everybody who
Yeah.
is South African would have that same problem.
Yes.
You know.
So I see this species doesn't have a lot of observations. So is this the one you found now recently?
That's one I actually found a couple of years ago.
A couple of years ago.
So the time frame that I was starting to go out with Outramps and volunteer at the herbarium, there was also a groundbreaking publication. Well, not groundbreaking, but for this area, it was very impactful. Kind of the first of its kind was when Neil Crouch and Gideon Smith described a new bulbine from Montague Pass.
Okay.
It's called Bulbine Audreyii, and they called it after Audrey Moriarty, who wrote the first field guide to flowering plants of the Outeniquan Klein Karoo.
Wow.
But so what she did, she collected specimens of that bulbine and she illustrated it in her book, because all of her illustrations in that book, beautifully hand-done watercolor. For those interested in going to view her original watercolors, they're on display at the Moriarty House at the Botanical
Oh,
Gardens.
great.
But so she illustrated that, but she said, okay, it's Bulbine lagopus, which is a very common species. But Crouch went back to her book and he looked at her illustrations and he said, that's not lagopus.
It must be something
And
different.
so he went and he looked at plants in Montague Pass and he found, no, it's a totally different species. And he described it, crediting her with the discovery. So Audreyii, named after her, even though she didn't realize she discovered a new species.
Yes.
But
Maybe
in
before you
doing
go on,
so-
sorry, maybe just explain how do you describe a species? I think that's useful.
well, there's no, I want to say there's very few hard and fast rules. It used to be that you had to write up a formal description in Latin, reason being that you have botanists from all over the world who use their own languages to describe species. And if you're English, you then have no access to what a Spanish guy is saying
Yes.
in his scientific paper,
course,
even though you want to read his revision. So the way they dealt with this in those days before Google Translate, they said, okay, we're going to have a common language for all taxonomists, and that's going to be Latin.
Yes.
So you had to write a Latin description. That way, even if you were English and reading a Spanish description, you could still get to the part where it is written in Latin and you could say, oh, I understand it.
Yes.
And so that was mandatory for describing a new species up until this century. And it was only over the past, 15, 20 years ago that they said, okay, it's not necessary anymore. We have Google Translate and so on and so forth. So in Crouch's description, he actually gives a Latin diagnosis.
Wow.
It's still, if you want to be fancy, it's still something you can do.
But I don't know my Latin that well. Hey?
No, me neither. But there's that. And you need to explain why you think it's a new species. So, in other words, in his paper, Crouch had to prove, she said it's lagopus, I say it's not. In what ways does it differ from Bulbine lagopus? And this is why I say his publication was groundbreaking in a sense, because he provided the first comprehensive breakdown of what constitutes Bulbine lagopus. Prior to that, we had herbarium specimens. We had the original description, which was very short and didn't actually give a lot of details. So he broke that down for us, which was very useful.
That's great.
And so he says, okay, so that's lagopus. And he had this whole thing drawn up in a sheet. He said, lagopus on one side, Audreyii on the other, length of bracts. This is how long they are in lagopus. This is how long they are in Audreyii. The color of the flowers, all of these little differentiating features. And he says, so Audreyii differs in these ways from lagopus. But now I should also say that there's massive subjectivity coming in. And I mean, I know subjectivity is like the bane of science.
Yeah.
We want to keep things objective. We want to
Yes.
keep things, the same across the board. But at the same time, who gets to decide when the differences are big enough to warrant elevation to, a species rank or a genus, rank? And ultimately, that is up to the guy who is writing the paper. So that's why we have so much confusion in certain areas, because we have what's called the splitters and the lumpers. So the splitters are people who think, okay, but tiny differences are enough to warrant separate species. And they split everything into like 101 different species. And the lumpers are those that come and say, oh, but those differences don't really matter. And they put it all into a few species.
That's what I never got. Like I'm still trying to figure out why some species are different species. Because some of them are quite similar, and I never understood. Like, but then I read papers on it, and I see like it's still in question, and tree names are still changing, and they're not sure what families the stuff are in. And it's a continuous science. Science is continuous. We'll never stop.
And I think it's something that you must do your best to critically think over to minimize the subjectivity that goes into your research. You'll never be able to get rid of it 100%. But there's a point where you'll say, okay, but this is definitely not fitting the description of that species. And unless you want to redescribe the species, okay, there's a different subspecies or a variety, or the person who described it didn't deal with the local form in this area. Unless you want to do that, you can also say, I think the differences are stark enough to warrant species status. And that's actually what we've been doing for me, myself, but I was guided in this whole process in a very, I want to say, fatherly way by my mentor, Uncle Niels, who is the main fundi at the Southern Cape Herbarium, and who actually has a special interest in succulent plants. Although at that time he was working on the genus Crassula, when I started bringing in bulbines, they began occupying a lot of our time and attention. And so I think our current area of focus is the bulbines. Not because I'm particularly fond of them. I mean, I love them, but they're not my first love, but they just happen to be a family that needs a lot of work.
A lot of work, yeah. I agree, because just by looking on iNet, the bulbines are usually the ones that people don't ID. They don't ID it into species level. No, I don't have the knowledge to do that, you know. Like, I can only make a suggestion. It might be that. Like, I'm not sure. It's not my speciality as well, but yeah. How did you collect the species, or how does it work? Like for the herbarium, or did you collect it on the Montague Pass?
Well, that's the other thing with describing a species, is that you need to collect a specimen. This also is part of minimizing the subjectivity. You can't just say, I found this plant
you need
at this
evidence.
place. Exactly. Because what if someone wants to say, all right, I'm doing a revision of the genus Bulbine, and I want to find out what constitutes the species Bulbine audrii, but all he's got is Crouch's description. Now, should he believe that? What if Crouch was exaggerating, you know?
Yeah.
So there must be a standardized physical pressed copy of the plant, pressed obviously for logistical reasons. You can't have a plant preserved in alcohol unless your facility has a lot of space. And also alcohol tends to bleach the color of the plant. But yeah, so basically, whenever you're describing a new species, collect specimens, press them, send them to the main herbaria. So like when we describe species, we typically send specimens to Compton Herbarium in Cape Town, at Kirstenbosch, which is one of the big ones in the country. And sometimes also to Pretoria, which is also a big one. I think the three biggest herbaria in the country is Bolus, Compton, and Pretoria. And Bolus is private, so we want to make our specimens accessible. I think it's at Stellenbosch or UCT, one of those, but it's a university herbarium.
I don't know that one.
Yeah, it was founded by Harry Bolus, an amateur enthusiast.
You're teaching me a lot of things now. I like it. So obviously you should at least have 3 samples, right? That's how I understand it.
Yes,
like,
at least 3, preferably more. Like for this species, Bulbine decumbens, I think we ended up with 8 specimens at the Southern Cape Herbarium alone, not counting all the ones we sent off to other herbaria.
Yeah. So I saw here on iNet, if I go back quickly, I think it's the previous one. There's like, from South Africa, there's like, where is it now?
You want decumbens?
I just want to put in Bulbine again. Because what fascinated me here, I know this is just iNet and it's citizen science, but look at all those observations and look at the number of species. You know, there's only 63 species. I think there might probably be more species out there for Bulbine, which fascinates me.
For sure.
Now that you mentioned it, like, I think it's not a species that's been looked upon like in fondness. You know, it's
Yes.
not a gladiolus. Or, you know, it's not a beautiful flower. It's like just a yellow boring flower. And you know, this one is interesting for me. What is that one's name
The
again?
stone copy.
The stone copy one.
Yeah,
It's just beautiful.
It's fascinating.
It's a fascinating one because you think it's like a conophytum or something, and then it's a bulbine. And
The leaves they look like jelly beans, and I
Yes.
heard from Jan Vlok that in rural communities in the Klein Karoo, it's actually common for little kids to eat the leaves
eat them.
because they apparently taste like a primitive form of jelly bean. I don't know.
Wow.
So it's
I didn't know
weird.
that. That's cool.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
I've tried eating them a couple times,
really?
but they never really. I never really gelled with them. No pun
Yeah.
intended.
But like, what's
But yeah.
so cool about this? Now you mentioned at the start, bulbine is a very medicinal plant.
Yes.
And like,
yes.
if there's more species to discover, there's potentially different medicines to be discovered. And this is what I
Yeah,
always
for
teach my
sure.
kids at school as well, because this is the value of diversity. There's so many things that we can make use of, humankind, you know, for
Yeah.
benefits for the society.
And honestly, from my perspective, I think that's the only way forward for conservation, looking at the world around us, is if we
exactly.
make the natural world relevant to mankind.
Yes.
If we fail to do that, then we can kiss our conservation goodbye because
Yeah.
it's doomed to failure. The world population is increasing exponentially with each passing minute. And that's more mouths to feed and more space to take up and more resources from this already burdened earth, you know, unless you can prove to people that it is in their best interests to invest in the long-term conservation and sustainable usage of the natural world, your children are not going to see the plants that you're seeing.
Yeah, but that's so great. I saw you teach your knowledge to your younger brothers. That's great. You should continue that. The problem of society is most people can't see a difference between one plant and the other. And they think a pine forest here is natural, you know. That's the basic person, the normal person thinks that. And it's not a lot of people who are actually aware of how cool where we're living. Like I always say, South Africa is one of the coolest countries in terms of diversity of species. There's so many different landscapes and adversity in the country, and
biomes. I mean, we're the
Yes.
world's smallest floral kingdom, the Cape Floristic region. There's only 6 floristic kingdoms in the world, and most of them are continent big. So like Australia is a floral kingdom, or the whole of Russia, and I mean, but then you have this tiny floral kingdom tucked away in the southern point of Africa, which is just amazing.
it's crazy.
And the vegetation type, which is like Mediterranean scrub, that's
Yeah.
also unique. There's very few places in the world that have the correct climatic and geographical conditions
it's
to
basically
support
there's
this.
spots in Australia that has it, and California, and then
And the Mediterranean.
obviously. It's so weird for me.
Yeah.
It's so weird. But that's probably, I wonder if that's why it's so diverse then, because they were constantly changing maybe over time, and all these plants had to adapt very
Yes,
fast maybe, and that's why it might be so diverse. I've always thought about it, but it's too diverse for me to know become an expert in everything, right? That's what's so fascinating for me. Fynbos is like there's too many stuff.
I think also what's interesting about fynbos is that it's a disturbance-driven ecology. So it's quite unlike forest, which relies on stasis and same old, expanding your borders with keerboom, with the legumes and the forest edge vegetation, and you know, being pushed back by fire, but always expanding. But it's the whole the stasis, the staticness of the forest biome is one of its defining features ecologically. Whereas with fynbos, if you don't have massive disturbance in the form of bushfire
It's gonna become boring.
it's going to become senescent, and the geophytes, the exciting species, as far as we're concerned, they're going to die out.
Yes.
Which is something to guard against.
Oh, no,
And
it's
so
on
I
that
think
topic.
that's
Sorry
also-
that I'm interrupting,
Yeah.
but the geophytes, do you know how long they can survive with, like, before for a disturbance event?
Yeah, it's I mean, there's been places at Table Mountain that haven't been burned for 70 years. I think at some places on Silvermine it's been like 120 years.
Wow.
Hectic. But now recently, the past year or so, some of those areas got burned, and we see geophytes coming.
That's amazing.
So the question for me was, were these plants that seeded in and and that grew, but they weren't obvious until the fire triggered their flowering? Or was it actually original plants from that long ago? And I think for me, I have this interesting hypothesis, but I think some of them were original plants. And I'm thinking specifically of the orchids. And I know we're speaking about bulbi now, but for me, my first love has always been the orchids.
The orchids.
From when
the
I
Disa?
got into... Yeah, that's my favorite genus.
You love Disa.
Yes, I'm
You
crazy
get
about
nice
them.
Disas here, actually.
Yeah,
Botanical.
you do.
Beautiful ones.
And so basically, one of the reasons I love orchids so much, well, there's their beauty, and there's their scarcity, and there's their biology.
Yeah.
So biology for me is absolutely mind-blowing. You know, if you were to ask me to define an orchid's interactions with the world around it in one word, I would say deception. Deception.
Wow, that's cool.
It's you say, okay, but it's a plant. Who is it deceiving? You know.
Yeah.
But
You're gonna have to explain now.
coming back to how a plant can survive that long without sending up leaves, because you think about it, a plant has to have leaves that
for
gets
photosynthesis.
exactly, and it must process carbon-14 and receive sunlight and sustain and build up its root system or its rootstock, so that it will be ready for when the fire comes, that it's going to flower, and flower well and be able to set fruit. But now, for all those 50, 70 years that those areas are not burnt in Table Mountain, very few orchid leaves came up relative to the amount of orchids that there actually were. So the question is, how do orchids manage to survive over that time frame without sending up leaves? Now, here's something very interesting. Orchids, they're by their very nature, are deceivers of the plants around them.
Okay.
So what happens is, you've seen an orchid seed, or maybe you haven't, because they're difficult to see.
Yeah.
There are some of the smallest seeds in the world. They're like dust, and so they don't have an endosperm, a part of the seed that will give it a kickstart.
Yes, obviously to
boost
energy
exactly.
to start. Yeah.
I mean, you've noticed, you see a mealy, it's relatively large as seeds goes. You put it in the ground, within a week or 2 weeks,
It's a lot
it's
of
up.
energy. Like
and-
Virgilia.
yeah,
It's a good example. There's a lot of energy in the seed of
exactly.
bean.
Yeah, a lot of nutriment. Whereas with the orchid, he hasn't got any of that. So how does the orchid seeds even survive? The thing is, the orchid seed goes and he has to land on a certain substrate which has a fungus in it, because an orchid cannot survive without fungus. It's interesting you mentioned the Disas, because the only orchid species that has been discovered, and I could be wrong because my research on this is a couple months old. So maybe there's been new research that came out and that I missed. But the only orchid in the world that's been proven that it can actually germinate without the aid of a fungus, a mycorrhizal fungus, is Disa uniflora, the Table Mountain Disa. And you know what's so abnormal about that? Is that they've got huge seeds. For an orchid, their seed can be 1.5 millimeters in diameter.
That's interesting.
And so they actually have that nutrient package. And also another reason their seeds are so large is because they grow next to rivers, and so the seed must float downstream to find a place it can grow.
Wow.
But yeah, so all orchids, and orchids, the largest family of flowering plants in the world at nearly 30,000 species, all of them need a mycorrhizal fungus. But now you may ask, okay, but how does the fungus just let itself be manipulated by the orchid, just sucking nutrients out of the fungus? And what happens is, the orchid seed tricks the fungus into invading its cell. I think it's called an endospermatic or endomycorrhizal interaction, where the fungus actually starts to, quote-unquote, eat the orchid seed. But the orchid seed then captures the fungus that has gone inside the cell and literally harnesses that as its slave. And for some, it will take the nutrients, and for some, it will grow the fungus, but it literally takes over the thing that was taking it over. And this is a tiny seed that's at a level you can't even see.
But how does it do that?
And so what happens, so the hypothesis is, and this is for most orchids true, that it sucks a lot of nutrient from the fungus initially.
Is it like a symbiotic relationship?
Yeah.
Is the fungus getting something from the seed?
Not initially,
Not
but
initially.
once the orchid has put up leaves, then for most species it begins to feed back into the fungus, and so there's a vested interest for the fungus to take the punch now. You're going to reap the benefits later, because the fungus can give nutrients which the orchid cannot obtain because it cannot photosynthesize at that day. But in return, the orchid can pass down excess
Carbon,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. But now, there's some some of these orchids which are called mycoheterotrophs. I think that's the right word, which literally means, so in Greek, a troph is just you eat something.
Yeah.
And a myco is fungus, so you're eating the fungus. But now these orchids don't give anything to the fungus. They suck everything they need from the fungus. And you'll see some of these orchids. I don't know if you want to look one of them up.
Yeah, let's do it.
One
Let's
of our
do it.
indigenous ones is called Didymoplexus.
You're going to have to spell
So
that
it's
for me.
D-I-D-Y.
Just wait. D-I-D-Y.
M-O-P-L-E-X. Yeah, there it is. Crystal orchids.
Cool.
Didymoplexus.
Yo, only 3 observations.
Yeah. But
Holy
now,
hell, let's go in here.
one thing you see with this thing is that there's no color, right? It's white.
Wow.
It's pale.
Let's go inside of this one quickly. Yeah, it's pale. It doesn't have colorization. So how does it
It has
get
no
pollinated?
chlorophyll.
No chlorophyll?
No chlorophyll whatsoever, which means it cannot photosynthesize.
Look at that.
It's so weird.
Holy hell, that looks like a fungus.
No leaves, eh? No leaves. Okay, but so this is one of those orchids that is a complete, I don't know if saprophyte is the right word, but it's living completely
I
off
think
the
it might
fungus.
be. Saprophyte.
Yeah.
That is the correct term.
Saprophytic, yeah. And so that's why it has no coloration, because it isn't photosynthesizing. But now you get
Wow,
some
but
of
do you know
these
what
orchids.
pollinates that?
No, I'm not sure.
Yo, it must be something very specific.
It could be a moth, given the white color of the flowers and the length of the floral tube.
But
You know,
it
you
probably
need some-
it's with scent.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
So a lot of white flowers tend to be pollinated
At
because they're visible
nighttime.
at night. Yes, and the moth will then.
Yes.
But yeah, so basically, some of these saprophytic orchids actually have coloration. You know, they've got chlorophyll. And the
Yeah.
question is, how do they obtain those nutrients? And the answer is fascinating.
Ooh.
The fungus is not like its own entity, but it's linked to neighboring trees and shrubs and vegetation, and it's getting the carbon from them, right? So the orchid has just come into, if you can imagine,
It's kind of like a parasite there.
exactly. So if you can kind of imagine an electric cable, right?
Yes.
And it's being fed from Eskom. Okay, well, Eskom doesn't feed electricity to anybody. So, okay, let's say it's being fed from someone's generator to that someone's house.
Yes.
Now someone cuts the cable and inserts now their power point in there. They're feeding off that.
That nutrient cycle that's happening underneath
That's
the surface.
exactly what the orchid is busy doing. And
That's
and so the
amazing.
orchid is deceiving, he's literally sucking nutrients from the trees around him. There was an experiment done on this in, I think it was Scotland, where they experimented with certain types of trees growing, like little baby trees growing in jars with orchids. And they would note, okay, so this is how a tree grows in a jar without an orchid. This is how it grows with an orchid. And over the test groups, how much nutrients do we see in these trees versus those? They found the orchid was busy taking some
the
of the
nutrients.
exactly.
Wow.
And so that's how I think orchids can survive in such an area that hasn't been burnt for so long without sending up leaves, and yet they still have a robust bulb.
Because they just live underneath the system, the
Yeah.
mycelium system probably.
Exactly. And it's one thing I'd really like to see happening in South Africa is for a duplicate of the Scotland study to be done in the fynbos biome to just prove that the orchids are taking
You can even
nutrients.
do it in the forest biome because you can get the
Exactly.
spirus, that forest copy.
Yeah,
And you get mystidium in the epiphytes. That'll be
well, the
interesting.
epiphyte is a whole
That's
other
other
world.
other world.
Yeah. So the orchid deceives a fungus and the plants around it, right? But he doesn't stop there. He goes on and he deceives his pollinators.
Wow.
It's, I don't know if you want to go to
Yeah, let's do it.
Dyza forficaria.
Let's just go back here.
So Dyza,
Dyza.
F-O-R-F. Yeah, and then it's going to show up here.
There it is.
Yeah.
I don't know this one. I've never seen this one. Yo, but you're giving me
only
all
one
the rare plants here.
So
This is
basically,
cool.
I'm just saying Dyza because that's how they say it in Latin most.
Yeah,
But
they say
as-
it in
if you wanna
Dyza.
speak
We say
Afrikaans,
it
it's
Dyza.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh,
But now
look at that.
you'll notice how this plant, excuse my kill,
That's fine.
but those parts there look like the wings of a beetle, the elytra of a
It
beetle.
does, yes.
Of a flightless beetle, moreover, because they're so short, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to zoom in.
No, I think this is the most I can.
Oh, okay. And then this looks like a beetle's abdomen, right?
Yeah.
And then these look like a beetle's feelers.
Oh, I see what you're
So
showing.
what happens is this orchid deceives a beetle into pollinating it.
Thinking it's a mate.
Exactly. So what happens is it releases this chemical compound in its scent. It's called, the scientists have dubbed it diazolactone, which smells exactly like a female beetle who is climbing onto a grass stem or the bush, or the branch of a bush, and she's releasing this pheromone into the air to tell male beetles, I'm ready to mate, come mate with me. So this orchid imitates that. But now not only that, but it imitates the dorsal surface of the beetle itself, so that the male will actually go ahead.
Yes.
And this is one of the very, very few cases in the world where it's been found the insect mates with the plant. Do you see this little niche over here?
Yes, I
That's
see
a
that.
sperm receptacle. The male puts his ovipositor, not ovipositor, his but yeah, he's basically his penis.
His penis.
In there, and he literally ejaculates sperm on this flower, thinking it's a
What?
female beetle. He's completely
But
deceived.
how does the pollen work then? How
So
does it
you
get
see,
spread?
It's these two white eyes,
Okay, I
as it
see
were.
that. Yeah.
That's
and
the
where's
viscidia.
the stigma? The stigma at the top.
The stigma should be this thing over here.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
okay.
And so actually what's inside these wing cases is the pollen sacs. So there's this huge teardrop shape of yellow pollen
Oh, so
inside
he
there.
has to
And
insert
so
it then.
when you get something stuck on here and you pull, then the whole thing, whoops, it just comes
Wow.
out. So that's now one of our indigenous orchids. And you could go on about orchid pollination for hours.
That's amazing.
Because-
I didn't know this. This is very interesting.
Yeah.
I love this.
And just to give some context on this specific plant, you may
Yeah.
have noticed there's only one observation.
So it's quite rare.
Yeah, it's never been seen again since 2016, I think it was.
So this is probably 2016. We can
2016.
actually
What,
check.
what does the date say?
Yeah, let's check.
Yeah, 2016.
2016, yes.
Yeah, there we go. So
Let's just zoom in there again because it's fascinating, this ring. Where is this, by the way?
it's Fernkloof there by
Oh,
Hermanus.
Vancouver. I want to go visit there now in September. I'm going to go for that Stamford, that Chelsea show.
Oh, yes.
Yes,
Yo,
yes.
You must enjoy it, eh?
Yeah, I'm going to enjoy it.
Yo.
I'm just going to go walk in the mountains there as well. I haven't really, I've been to Fernkloof only once. I want to go back in this period because it's going to be nice now.
Yo, with all the autumn, spring flowering orchids. It just-
Exactly.
But yeah, so basically what happens with this species is
Yeah.
it has only been collected a couple times for herbaria, and every time it was found, there was only one or two or maximum three plants growing together, and you never found more than that. It was exceedingly rare, and so the last time it was seen was 1968 when Anthony Hall found a specimen, I think it was on Muizenberg in the Cape Peninsula.
The same species now.
Yeah, same species.
Okay.
And since then it had not been seen.
Wow.
So people actually thought it was extinct. And the red list listing said extinct, critically endangered, possibly extinct. And then people stumbled across this by accident in
And citizen
Fernkloof.
science ship.
And it was a rediscovery, and they said, oh, wow, it's not extinct after all. But now, obviously, a lot of research done on just this one plant. And
Yes.
they isolated that scent compound, and you know what they did? This is amazing. It's a prime example for me of how science becomes practical. It's not all in a laboratory somewhere
it's not.
with guys in white coats and goggles, but they actually took the scent and, like you see, it says here, dug up by a rodent. So this plant no longer
Okay.
exists. It's dead.
Yeah.
And so you're like, oh, the species extinct. No. They released the scent the next year in that reserve.
What, the scent of the flower,
The
right?
scent of the flower. And they had the beetles coming to the scent with the pollen of the orchid stuck underneath. So they knew that the orchid was still in existence.
But is that beetle not like a generalist, maybe carrying other pollen?
No, because they
is it-
did genetic tests
Oh,
on the
did
pollen.
they? They collected the
Yeah,
pollen.
But also remember, it's a very specific pollinator and plant relationship here. The beetle doesn't go to any other orchids because it's the only one that mimics the scent of the female.
That's
And so-
insane.
and
what
so they
what beetle
genetic-
is it? Do you know maybe the
It's
beetle?
a longhorn beetle. Yeah.
Longhorn beetle.
And so basically now they did genetic tests on the pollen and they found it was pollen of two different orchids, separate individuals, so that we know the species is not extinct. It's still out there, but we just haven't found them.
This
yet.
is fascinating.
So this
now
is
that you
now-
said longhorn, now it looks like a longhorn with its
Yeah.
like its antenna long. That's crazy.
It's absolutely insane.
Oh, but this just makes me, it's blown my mind.
Yeah? So the orchid is deceiving his pollinators, he's deceiving his host, and then finally he's deceiving his predators.
Yeah.
I don't know. if you've ever seen the beetroot dissa,
Which one is that?
the dark red one.
I think I've seen that one.
Yeah.
I think I have.
And the reason it's dark red and only flowers in the first few years after fire is because it belongs to a section of the genus Disa that's very palatable to antelope. So to camouflage with the burnt environment after a fire, it's dark red, and antelope who hunt visually, they struggle to see it and eat it. So it's just, I mean, orchid is just deceiving on every level. So
This is amazing, but coming back to this, like, it was rediscovered, but maybe this thing is super adapted to a very disturbed environment. Like, does this come up after a fire, obviously?
I think it did. I'm not clued up on the details. I wasn't among the lucky few that went to have a look at it.
It's crazy. Because maybe it needs not frequent fires as well. You know, that's another problem that we're having.
Although I think they did a study on the historical records of it, and they didn't find any strong correlation between its appearance and a fire. It belongs to a section of Disa that's adapted to flowering even in post-fire vegetation. It's very long and like a grass, basically.
Now, when you say section of Disa, what do you mean by that?
So in a big genus, you often have it divided into little sections which are more closely related to each other than they are to the rest.
To the rest,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
Okay.
So-
So Uniflora, for instance, is kind of on its own. Because of the seed, maybe?
Uniflora, well, it is unique in that it has that seed, but it's in a section with Disa racemosa and Tripetaloides, which are all like wet-growing Disas.
You make me think now, you know where Disa uniflora, on the slopes, you know, on the rock faces, and where there's a lot of water. Maybe that's why the seed has a lot of energy stored in it, because there's no mycelium network.
Often, yeah. Although it has
That's
also been
interesting.
scientifically proven that even though it can grow without a fungus, it does massively better if there
If
is a
there is a
present.
fungus,
Yeah,
yeah, that makes sense.
yeah,
That makes
like the
sense.
plants develop much quicker. So,
Wow, that's crazy.
yeah, no. But that's why you look at a Disa's roots and you see all those fine little hairs. It's because it's connecting to the fungus. It's stealing those nutrients.
Yes,
And that's also why it's often difficult to grow terrestrial orchids in captivity, because they're so reliant on that fungus. If you don't have that fungus in the pot, then aish.
Do you know any people that's growing Disa as a hobby?
The
or
George
for a-
Orchid Society, they grow the wet-growing Disas because they're the ones that are not so dependent on fungus.
Is
So
that the white one? That's a
Tripetaloides
Yes, that's a
and
beautiful one.
racemosa and
That one's
orata and
super wet, yeah.
cordyceps.
Always at the river.
Yes.
Yeah, but you get so many different... That's what's so fascinating for me, because if you have a different soil, you get a different species. It's almost like in the
Exactly.
fynbos. It's just crazy. And then you get stuff like this. It's just like outliers.
Yeah. No, it's so
And like the
weird.
previous one was crazy. I've never seen that in my life.
It's pretty rare.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's up in KZN.
No.
But yeah, so with the bulbines, I mean, obviously, I was just hunting orchids the whole time. I was in the field for orchids at the time of the year for orchids, and finding new distribution records and stuff. But for me, I was just thinking and dreaming orchids. But that wasn't to the exclusion of other plants. And so it so happened that there's been a lot of work done on orchid in South Africa, not a lot on bulbine.
Yeah.
I wasn't discovering new species with orchids, but with bulbine, I would often find things that people couldn't identify. And so we had, I think the first two that we published, Uncle Niels and I, was bulbine Thinophylla and bulbine decumbens. So decumbens was the one that was on the screen.
Yes.
And Thinophylla, the name means dune-loving.
Yeah. Should I put that one on?
Yeah, go for it.
Maybe.
So that one is endemic to the area between George and Sedgefield, as we currently know it.
Okay.
Bulbine?
So it's in the dune there.
Yeah. In the dune, TH.
TH.
Yeah. And it should, yeah, there we go.
There we go.
First one. 8 observations. Do you want to go to the map just to get an
Yeah,
idea
let's
of
get
the
an idea.
distribution? There was an outlying observation from Gerikwa, but I
going
don't
on
think
here
that's correctly identified.
Oh, this is very zoomed in.
Yeah. But so basically...
And it's conservation status?
I'm actually trying to see if I cannot get that thing assessed, because I think it should qualify for vulnerable
I
at
think
least.
so. If it's like a very specific spot. I
Yeah.
don't feel like this is the right spot.
Yeah, it's in the garden route.
Yeah, why is it at
Oh,
Hermanus now?
yeah, Ferncloof for Disa forficaria. That's what we were looking for.
That was probably why it stayed there. Here we go.
Yeah. So currently, the two type locations were at Sedgefield and at Pine Dew.
Sarsveld as well.
Yeah, that's currently the biggest population of the species that I know of, because the two type locations have been developed to the extent that I think the species is being wiped out there or is genetically not viable. The
Okay.
last census I did of the Sedgefield population revealed, I think, 5 plants.
Wow.
5 plants. Whereas
Crazy.
Sarsveld has more, like 30 or so. But I think that's our biggest conservation priority, is conserving the Sarsveld population. Extremely rare.
That's crazy.
It is, yeah.
Like, when does this flower? Does it have a flowering season? It
It
seems like it's flowering anytime.
In autumn, yeah. That's its peak, but
peak.
It can flower through winter as well. Yeah.
That's
yeah.
the thing here with the Southern Cape. It's not really a season pattern here, except for the winter, summer. But the rainfall is kind of the same.
Yeah, the rainfall is weird. It's not properly winter rainfall.
Yeah,
it's not properly
summer
rainfall.
rainfall. So it's like, what is
But
it?
it's also the perfect environment then for all kinds of really unique stuff that's specialized for the Southern
Well, it's
Cape.
the same with the dry area at the back, you know, Oudtshoorn, joch. There's a lot of
Precies,
stuff
yeah,
there. In the Swartberg, Pas, that area, joch, it's beautiful.
Yeah, no, that's true.
You get so many weird things everywhere. I just love it. You know,
Yeah,
I
no,
just
same. I mean, that's why I'm here.
yeah.
Another bulbine, which you won't find, it's not been added to INAT and his database yet, but it is described. It came out this year in March, I think. Bulbine echinella. And that's endemic to literally Mossel Bay.
Okay.
Nowhere else in the world. What's so weird about it is that it's a pygmy bulbine. So normally the place you go to find the tiny bulbine species, pygmy bulbine, like under 15, 20 centimeters, even more flowering. Normally the place you find them is Namakwaland. But now here we have one in the Southern Cape. To my knowledge, it's the first proper pygmy bulbine apart. It is the only pygmy bulbine south of the mountains. In the Karoo, you've got the one that looks like a jelly bean, Mesembryantoides, and I think there was one other. But now it's this little one from Mossel Bay. Echinella literally means baby hedgehog baby sea urchin, because it looks like a little hedgehog with its leaves.
That's
and
very
it has
cool.
white flowers. To put that in perspective, I mean, bulbine, we all know it's got yellow flowers or orange flowers.
Bulbinella is white.
Yeah. But this now, bulbine, white flowers. There's only one proper bulbine species that I know of that has white flowers, and that would be Tribnerai. And then there's also alba, which is a synonym of frutescens. But white flowers are extremely rare in the genus bulbine. And now you ask, how is it that one with white flowers, which is so unusual, could remain undiscovered in Mossel Bay for so long? And the
That's true,
answer
actually.
is simply that nobody's working on bulbine. Very few people.
Well, just out of my experience, I'm not expert in this, but like when I walk past a bulbine, I just think it's the same species. And that's my own ignorance. I'm going to look at it a lot different now. Like, seriously, but how do you identify? How do you know if it's a different species or not? Because I don't understand how this flower works. Does it have, 6 petals?
Yeah. So bulbine always has that's the rule, that bulbine has 6 petals, and it's often that 3 of them, the sepals at the back, would be shaped or colored slightly differently than the other
there a
3
picture there?
petals. Yeah. So if you go back to the first picture, see these 3 a Y shape
see.
are kind of more orange and thinner than these other 3, the Mercedes-Benz sign, which are more pale yellow and broader.
Okay.
But the difference is especially obvious in bulbine decumbens, when these are actually spatulate and the others are not.
Okay.
So there was actually...
So it's nothing to do with their leaf then? How's the leaves should probably
The leaves
also...
are helpful, but for something like this, like if you go to the leaf here, you'll see the leaves look like grass. And this is the rule for most bulbine.
Fleshy grass.
So if the leaves look like this, the tendency is it probably won't be a great help for identification.
Okay, that's good to know.
Yeah.
Actually.
But for something like that little hedgehog bulbine, that's really distinctive.
That's a distinctive feature, yes. Okay.
Sure, I see it's getting late.
Okay, no, but we can wrap it up if you need to. But we can have another chat, another podcast. I really enjoyed this.
for sure.
Like, seriously, so you need to go now, no? Okay. But yeah, thank you so much, Ludwig, just to be
Thanks
here.
for inviting me.
We need to do this again. I have so much more to ask here.
No, same.
We need to go out together, go and explore some. Invite me anytime, like, seriously. Yeah, thank you so
George
much. Yeah, George Peak, anything you want.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Ludwig.
Yeah.
You can say goodbye. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thanks.